Africa's great primary forest is a world of its own. It's the largest reserve of wildlife on the entire dark continent. Under a canopy of trees hundreds of years old, every rustle, every scent, every sound is perceptible. The living world has struck a perfect balance. From the tiniest insect to the largest mammal, from those that lurk in the shadows to those that thrive in the sunlight, they all depend upon each other for their development and have since time began. Among these creatures live humans, Pygmies, whom today we call indigenous peoples. These nomadic hunter-gatherers are part of the one large whole formed by the infinite diversity of the forest. But the real pillars supporting this one-of-a-kind structure are the trees, with names such as Limba, Okume, Sipo, or Sapeli. Over 4,000 indigenous plant species form the wealth of this enormous, ancient woodland. With its 2 million square kilometers, the Great African Primary Forest spans more than 6 countries in the Congo River Basin. It's our planet's second largest green lung after the Amazon rainforest. And like it, the African rainforest harbors tropical timber, a crucial source of revenue and jobs for the livelihood of its inhabitants. Yet massive exploitation is shrinking it bit by bit. However, in the north of the Congo Republic lies a forest concession that stands apart. Here, far from the capital city of Brazzaville, people endeavor to make the impossible happen. Imagine an exploitation concerned with profitability that nevertheless respects the balance of the rainforest's ecosystems and its people's culture. A challenge that forces professionals to reinvent their tasks on a daily basis, to face up to the myriad surprises the great forest has in store for them. This concession, nearly 2 million hectares, is a genuine laboratory. The success or failure of the project could transform man's relationship to forests for decades to come. On one side of this road is a timber concession of over 1 million hectares. On the other, Odzala National Park. Logging operations employ eco-guards to watch over both domains and allow animals to move about freely, both in the park and in logging zones. This morning, a patrol of eco-guards has been alerted to the presence of a small band of poachers on the edge of the park. The fight against poaching is always #1 on the agenda. Because in the pacified Republic of Congo, trafficking and detrimental common practices are a threat not only to animal species, but to the equilibrium of the entire forest. New weapons and the organization of international networks have turned hunting into nothing short of a pillage. Hunted for its tusks that fuel the illegal ivory trade, the forest elephant is in grave danger of extinction. 60% of elephants in the Congo Basin have been killed within the past 10 years.
Elephant trail.
Yet elephants play a fundamental role in the ecosystem.
You're going to see tracks there. When an elephant walks, it leaves behind fecal matter composed of fruit from trees like the sapeli and sipo. After a rainfall, the dung produces a recolonization of trees. That's why after an elephant passes through an area where there were no sapeli trees, you find that after a year or even 6 months, as soon as it rains, there are new tree sprouts growing in the elephant's dung.
little further on, the eco-guards discover a metal snare, a device that's been outlawed. The team has been trained in ambush techniques and attempt to catch the poachers red-handed.
On your knees, on your knees.
Sorry, Chief. Sorry, Chief. Sorry. Sorry. Sorry, Chief.
Hands in the air. Hands in the air. Are there wires in there? Metal wires get a lot of game. They impoverish the forest because there are some people who lay between 500 to 1,000 wires. 1,000 wires in the forest. Sometimes you find animals that are already starting to decompose. The putrid stench frightens away the other animals. Little by little, the animals flee far into the forest. That's why the use of metal wires has been outlawed.
These hunters aren't big poachers. They get off with a simple warning, and of course their traps are destroyed. Loggers in the Congo must reach a compromise with an element that is unique in all the world: the native peoples of the forest, formerly known as Pygmies. They've lived here for thousands of years, and for them, the forest is more than a simple environment. It's a fertile breeding ground that also provides them with clothing, shelter, medicine, and food. They climb trees to harvest honey, caterpillars, and leaves. They know which roots to use as pain reliever or insect repellent. They recognize every plant and every animal sound. They've learned to make use of every level of the forest. The camps of these nomadic hunter-gatherers are short-lived, made of cleverly assembled sticks and leaves. Every detail of their lives has been adapted to the forest. Environmentally respectful logging requires that special attention be paid to the needs of local communities. A mission that can prove highly complex, because the people of the forest share the land with another indigenous group living along the paths, the Bantu. The Bantu are widespread throughout Africa and tend to dominate the other peoples. Every decision must first go through them. Here, in this village, the two communities live side by side. Mathieu Auger-Schwarzenberg accompanies the social communicators dispatched by the logging operations. Together, they hope to create the best possible relationship with the local population, whose opinion will directly influence the logging project.
I won't be working directly with you. The FSC doesn't work directly with the local people. That's why you'll hardly ever see me. It's Mr. Eric, who represents IFO, along with his entire highly competent social team, who will come to work with you. But in a certain capacity, my organization and I are there to guarantee that if they want to continue working according to our rules and principles, your rights must be known within the framework of their activity.
To gain a better understanding of the village's different points of view, the communicators have them draw a map on the ground that indicates all the zones they feel are important.
This is a very effective way of opening up communication with the people. It's the moment when the company explains the rights of use to local and indigenous peoples, their conditions of access to the land. This is when they discuss the restrictive conditions of an agreement between them. So it's also the critical moment when the people realize they have the right to refuse operations if they don't want them. There are very few companies in the Congo basin that use this type of dialogue and exchange with the people. These maps are faithfully reproduced by computer and a large number printed up. Then we head out to check the mapping done on the computer with the people out in the field to make sure that there are no mistakes. Only after this whole process of negotiation, discussion, and exchange, only then can the company begin logging in the area. It takes about a month. How long are you going to spend out in the field? A good month in the village, taking measurements out in the forest. The indigenous peoples are the lords of the forest here. They're the ones who can name the trees. Actually, all logging operations employ indigenous people to count their timbers. I'm incapable of naming more than 20 trees out in the forest, and I've spent 13 years here. I dare you to find anyone, besides 1 or 2 Europeans, who can name more than 20 over the course of their entire lifetime. Because it's easy to recognize a board, but much harder to recognize a tree, because we can't see its leaves. You have to know how to recognize it on the ground. But we don't know the barks. It's a science that they've mastered for thousands of years. The only thing we've done is put a name on the wood they've known for generations on end.
After the meeting in the main village, it's time to venture into the heart of the forest. Sensitive zones such as rivers and streams, inhabited areas or areas reserved for hunting must be mapped out in order to be protected. The rivers are easy, but the nomadic camps are harder to locate since they change with the seasons. It's up to the social communicators to gather the most accurate information possible from the communities living here. Emerson, Indépendant, and Pascal strike out to meet a few isolated indigenous families. Their camp is about an hour's walk from the nearest path. In the Congo, it's estimated nearly 30,000 people live in the forest most of the year. Indépendant himself comes from an indigenous community. As a child, he went to the school built by the logging operation and was later trained to become a social communicator.
Anybody home? Here we are. Hello. 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 No need for introductions because now we know each other. We are working on development and planning. You are the indigenous population of Mbanza. When we want to log, the inhabitants of the village of Mbanza must be informed of the activity we want to carry out in their zone. Considering we're at least 30 kilometers from the original villages of Mbanza here. But the inhabitants of Mbanza come here sometimes to attend to their business, like collecting food. We were told we could find them in the encampments. So we follow them where they go, to work with them, because they're the ones who master these forest areas. We're going to work with this new device. I'll explain how it works.
To better grasp the population's needs, a tool was developed to compile the map of trees that need protecting. Since they can't read, they use touchscreen illustrations to identify the role the trees play in their daily life: dietary, medicinal, or spiritual. It's now time to choose who will accompany the social communicators out into the forest. The best hunters and gatherers in the village.
When we, the planning and development services, arrive in the villages, the village people really help us out. The whole goal of the mission is to protect what belongs to them. There are many different trees in the forest, but they know which ones have caterpillars and which ones they go to for worship. Which tree is used for which particular activity. We're in a spot that used to be an encampment. We buried children here, and on the other side there used to be a village. So together with them, we identify these places and the sacred trees. You might come to a tree that has good wood, but since it's important, it's protected for the people.
Ok. Quel moment sortir le point nettoyer d'abord?
The small group points out a tree with an impressive-looking trunk, a sapeli. This tree houses a precious dietary resource for the indigenous people.
They said it's a tree that has caterpillars, so we automatically have to save it for them, for their people.
The caterpillars feed on sapeli leaves and are easy to harvest. They're a rich source of protein, minerals and vitamins, the most nourishing edible insect in the world. It's thus vital that the trees they live in be preserved for the people. The tree is marked with paint. There'll be no cutting permitted for a radius of 100 meters around it. There are countless reasons to protect the trees. Because they house caterpillars or honeybees, or else because their leaves, like those of the coconut, are essential for food preparation. Or else because their bark is a crucial ingredient in traditional medicines. Each tree selected by the indigenous people is catalogued along with its variety, function, and GPS coordinates.
This is a mokolongo. It's a medicinal tree, and it plays a very important role in the health of the locals here. It treats hemorrhoids and back pain. It's important for the indigenous people. That's why they've asked us to protect it.
The indigenous people have decided to protect a total of about 50 trees near their nomadic village. The need to confer directly with those affected by the exploitation of the forest seems obvious, yet the practice is still too rare. Only a handful of operations in the north of Congo have grasped how essential this dialogue truly is. Bokonji, the spirit of the forest, makes an appearance during the celebration thrown in honor of the 3 social communicators, as if he too wanted to show how he protects his people and trees.
As you can imagine, we'll be spending the night here. To put it plainly, that means we're welcome here. That's what we mean by permanent contact with the people. That's why you see us dancing with them.
It's not just the trees that benefit from protection. The dialogue with the people has revealed another concern. The need to preserve a 350 square kilometer zone around the village of Mbomo. Because this is where one of the largest gorilla populations in all of Central Africa is to be found. Magdalena Bermejo is a primatologist. For her, this heartfelt cry from the villagers has changed everything. Elsewhere, reserves are created without any input whatsoever from local communities. But here, it's the inhabitants themselves who've decided to use their ancestral lands to protect gorillas and stand up to logging operators.
Everyone was frightened in the village of Mbomo. They didn't let the logging prospectors through. I didn't ask them to do anything. It was their own initiative. They said, "We decided to do this. It's for research, to protect our animals. We know very well what they do when they cut down trees. We don't want any part of that."
Together, they developed ecotourism based on gorillas. An initiative that's even more remarkable due to the fact that these creatures are considered dangerous.
The villagers realized it was possible to approach the animals, that they didn't run away. They thought, that's impossible. If we follow a group of gorillas, the same one, as soon as they notice our presence, they're going to kill us. They understood the animals' behavior and what you had to do to observe them in the forest. We explained how habituation was a process that led to something bigger and more important, understanding the animals, studying them, trying to understand the dynamic and what elements they bring to the forest.
For Magdalena, this grassroots action is an opportunity that fosters her scientific work. She set up over 60 cameras in the forest to study the different behaviors of these great apes and their relationship to their environment.
They're very relaxed here. Each has its own feeding zone. But at first, if we look at this previous sequence, there's still movement. There's this individual that tries to approach the zone. The bale informs it this is the spot where he's going to be. For 2 or 3 hours, the animals fed in this zone, and one after the other, we see how they all turn around the spot and who ousts whom. The group eats the roots of a specific variety of tree. They eat varieties here, and that's unique. There are no references to lowland gorillas in other study zones. They seek out roots that are deep in the ground.
The gorilla takes advantage of every level of the forest, even its cellar. By consuming leaves, fruits, and roots, it disperses seeds. Like the elephant, it grants a priceless favor to the ecosystem by contributing to its balance. But even if the overall gorilla population has increased over the past few years, they're still an endangered species.
I think we're on the right track, but there's still hunting. Poaching, that's a real conundrum for everyone. Maybe we'll manage to put an end to it for the gorillas. That'll depend on everyone's combined efforts. Over in the village of Mbomo, they're still waiting for tourists to come back. Have you seen a gorilla? Our forest is so beautiful. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but we're on the right track.